Lee Nam-yong's long commentary, In the Era of North Korean Drones and Missiles, Is Our Security Still Stuck in the 20th Century? Hello, this is Lee Nam-yong's long commentary. In the era of North Korean drones and missiles, is our security still stuck in the 20th century? In this commentary, I would like to treat North Korea's drone and missile threats not as a narrow question of military technology, but as a problem of a vast web of relations that links the Republic of Korea's armed forces, government, industry, alliances, citizens, media, and even cyber and outer space. By drawing on global standards and world best practices, the defense and security domain of the U.S. Federal Enterprise Architecture (FEA), relevant domestic and international statistics, and recent war cases, I hope to organize step by step how to define the concepts, diagnose the current state of our security system, and then prescribe what must concretely change. From the perspective of relational philosophy, I also wish to offer a way of seeing security not as a set of objects but as a structure of relationships. The skies over the Korean peninsula have already become a three-dimensional battlefield. War today can no longer be explained only with tanks on land, warships at sea, and fighter jets in the air. As the war in Ukraine has shown, a three-dimensional battle space in which small loitering drones, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, military satellites and cyber attacks are employed simultaneously is no longer a theory but a reality. The next crisis on the Korean peninsula is highly likely to unfold as a multidimensional battle space in which thousands of drones, dozens of missiles, various rockets and artillery shells, satellites and cyber attacks pour in at the same time. North Korea has already secured a wide range of means, including short and medium-range missiles, intercontinental ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and submarine-launched ballistic missiles. In recent years, it has also flaunted reconnaissance satellites, solid-fueled missiles, hypersonic missiles, and various unmanned aerial assets. This is not merely a show of hardware. It is a strategic message that it seeks to dominate both the airspace over the peninsula and the cyber domain at the same time. From the perspective of relational philosophy, the essence of our security does not lie in the sheer number of missiles as an isolated object, but in how North Korea's missiles, drones, satellites, cyber operations, and psychological warfare are connected to and impact our military, government, alliances, people, and media. North Korea's threat has shifted from the era of quantity to an era of quality and combinations. North Korea's threat is no longer a question of how many missiles it fires. The key lies in how it combines long-range and short-range assets, conventional and tactical nuclear weapons, ballistic and cruise systems, manned and unmanned platforms, and cyber and electronic warfare. Even a few dozen low-cost loitering drones can paralyze radars, air defenses, and ammunition depots. If cruise and ballistic missiles follow on top of that, the burden on the defending side can quickly become overwhelming. We now live in an era where strategic advantage is determined less by the types of weapons possessed and more by the sequence and manner in which they are combined. In relational philosophy terms, North Korea's strategic threat does not arise from the performance of a single weapon system as an object, but from the way different systems are combined over time or simultaneously. The pattern of using drones to confuse radars and air defense networks, followed by missiles and artillery, and then additional drone strikes to cripple critical infrastructure and command and control systems, is already being repeated in multiple battlefields around the world. If our military continues to think in stovepipes divided by weapon categories, services, and mission types, it will be difficult to escape a structural disadvantage in which a relationally evolving threat is pursued in a linear fashion. We remain stuck in a 20th century security structure of drawing lines and defending them. The Republic of Korea spends a substantial share of its gross domestic product on defense and has become a major defense industrial power. Its ground forces, naval power, air power, precision-guided munitions, and intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities have all improved significantly compared to the past. However, From a global standard perspective, the issue is not simply how much we spend, but how our spending is structured. Our security still relies heavily on a line-drawing model in which the Army, Navy, Air Force, cyber units, intelligence agencies, and space-related organizations operate in separate silos. As long as air defense and missile defense are primarily managed by the Air Force, counter-battery and multiple rocket response by the Army, maritime and coastal defense by the Navy, and cyber defense by yet another organization, it can become ambiguous who holds the authority and responsibility to issue integrated orders when drones, missiles, and cyber attacks arrive at the same time. Relational philosophy tells us not to design objects, but to design relationships. Our current security structure is closer to a 20th century model, in which air defense and missile defense systems are layered on top of legacy objects, such as corps, divisions, fleets, and air wings. Threats are invading across domains in relational, intertwined ways, while our defenses are still organized to respond by separate domains and services. This gap creates inherent structural limitations. Re-examining North Korea's systemic war strategy through the lens of unrestricted warfare. To understand North Korea's strategy, we must look at it through the concept of unrestricted warfare. Unrestricted warfare does not confine war to the traditional military domain. It treats all available tools in politics, the economy, finance, diplomacy, intelligence, cyber, psychology, law, and media as potential instruments of warfare. It is a way of thinking about systemic war that erases the boundaries between war and peace, military and non-military, and combatants and civilians. North Korea is trying to exploit not only drones, missiles, and nuclear weapons, but also pro-North propaganda toward the South, cyber hacking, virtual asset theft, illicit shipping, front companies, sanctions evasion, psychological warfare broadcasts, and information operations to fuel distrust and division within South Korean society. This is not a simple security threat. It is an unrestricted warfare strategy that simultaneously seeks to shake the trust, legitimacy, and economic foundations of the Republic of Korea as a system. From the viewpoint of relational philosophy, security is not merely a question for the armed forces. It is about protecting the entire web of relations connecting the economy, finance, media, judiciary, education, religion, and civil society. We can no longer assume that the only scenario is nuclear war or full-scale conventional war. From the perspective of unrestricted warfare, we must systematically develop doctrines of strategy, tactics, and operations that encompass a wide spectrum of irregular warfare, cyber warfare, hacker warfare, and information warfare, and use them to radically innovate our national defense and security posture. To respond to North Korea's unrestricted warfare strategy, we too must design an integrated response architecture across both military and non-military domains with the explicit objective of protecting our constitutional system. This is the new doctrine of security for our era and the minimum safety device for protecting the people. The world is moving toward integrated air and missile defense and kill webs. NATO and other major advanced countries are building integrated air and missile defense systems at both the national and alliance levels. Rather than simply drawing a line like the demilitarized zone and guarding it, they are redefining security as a continuous defensive space of data and networks. They are connecting radars and various sensors, fighter jets and anti-aircraft guns, surface-to-air missiles and ballistic missile interceptors, as well as cyber and electronic warfare assets into a single network to detect and respond in real time to all aerial and missile threats approaching from 360 degrees. Israel is implementing multi-layered defense by placing medium-range and long-range missile interceptors and laser-based interception systems on top of the Iron Dome, which counters short-range rockets and artillery shells. Germany and other European countries seek to extend such systems into upper-tier defenses for the entire European region. The United States and its allies are also developing the concept of the kill web. A kill web is a form of integrated operation that links intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance, ISR, cyber operations, electronic warfare, and precision strike assets into one mesh so that missile launch preparations and command and control nodes are paralyzed before a missile is even fired, effectively preempting enemy capabilities. Our military has officially declared the adoption of a kill web concept and the development of integrated air and missile defense. However, we must soberly examine how deeply this concept has actually permeated our command structures, unit organizations, budgetary frameworks, and training systems, as opposed to remaining as slogans on paper. It is not enough to import global standard concepts. We must meticulously design a uniquely Korean integrated defense doctrine and implementation plan that reflects our terrain, population density, industrial structure, and urban patterns. Military intelligence assets and AI-based integrated command and decision support systems are the brain of security. In any war, the first critical failure tends to occur when the eyes and brain of information are paralyzed. In modern warfare, military intelligence is no longer a supporting function in the rear. It is the brain that plans and orchestrates the entire war. Diverse military intelligence assets, signals intelligence, imagery intelligence, human intelligence, geospatial intelligence, open source intelligence, and cyber intelligence play a central role at every level of strategy, operations, and tactics. Reconnaissance satellites, high-altitude UAVs, maritime patrol aircraft, ground surveillance radars, electronic warfare platforms, cyber centers, and intelligence analysis units collect different data streams, but if these streams are not integrated into a common operational picture, they will not translate into combat power. At the strategic level, we need early warning systems that synthesize information on North Korea's nuclear, missile, and drone developments, the military and diplomatic moves of allies and neighboring countries, and risks in global supply chains, energy, and finance. At the operational level, it is essential to identify targets and maintain situational awareness. Which targets, in which theatre, along which front, at what time, and in what sequence should be attacked or defended. At the tactical level, artillery, missile units, drones, fighter jets, and special forces must share accurate real-time data on locations, targets, ammunition, and damage assessments to concentrate firepower effectively. All of these processes ultimately depend on the quality of military intelligence assets and how they are linked. We can no longer rely solely on human eyes and hands for the collection, analysis, and sharing of such intelligence. The deluge of data generated by drones, satellites, sensors, and cyberspace far exceeds what human analysts alone can process in terms of speed and volume. We must therefore introduce artificial intelligence into as many steps as possible: surveillance and reconnaissance, signals and imagery analysis, anomaly detection, target candidate generation, and damage assessment, to integrate our military intelligence assets on an AI basis. Artificial intelligence should not be a mere tool for handling repetitive tasks. It should become a decision support system that refines the battle space picture so that commanders can make faster and more accurate decisions. All of these military capabilities must be integrated on an AI foundation. Only then can our forces avoid falling behind and instead seize the initiative in a 21st century war environment dominated by speed and complexity. A question that remains: what is still lacking in a Korean-style multi-layered defense system? The Republic of Korea is developing a multi-layered defense system that includes Patriot systems, medium-range surface-to-air missiles, long-range intercept systems, and a Korean version of Iron Dome against long-range artillery and rockets. Efforts to simultaneously establish systems that intercept ballistic missiles at tens of kilometers above ground and respond to low-altitude threats are extremely important. Our defense network to protect the Seoul metropolitan area and major industrial facilities is also becoming denser. However, if we assume a scenario in which hundreds of missiles, thousands of long-range artillery shells, and hundreds of drones arrive at once, significant structural limitations remain. The essence of defense is not simply interception rates, it is the relationship between the attacker's cost structure and the defender's cost structure. North Korea can deploy relatively inexpensive drones and rockets in large numbers, while we are in a position where we must repeatedly employ expensive interceptors and systems to counter them. For this reason, we must pursue strategies that make the cost structure more favorable to us. For example, laser interceptors, electronic jamming, decoys, cyber disruption, distributed power grids, and reinforcement of physical protection for critical facilities. In addition, true multi-layered defense cannot be achieved through military interception alone. We must also establish in advance an integrated civil-military government framework that allows everyday life to continue even under conditions of power outages, communications disruptions, and financial network paralysis. It is not enough to intercept missiles and drones. We must simultaneously build resilience so that the daily lives of our people and the systems of the state can endure sustained shocks. Rebuilding the Republic of Korea's defense and security architecture from an FEA perspective. The U.S. Federal Enterprise Architecture, FEA, defines defense and national security as a single line of business and designs. At the architectural level, how information, personnel, organizations, budgets, systems, and services should be connected within it. It views defense and security not as a series of ad hoc battles, but as a service delivered to the public, and systematically analyzes how stable this service is, where overlaps and gaps exist, and how data should flow among agencies. The Republic of Korea likewise needs to design a defense and security FEA that encompasses the Ministry of National Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, each service branch, the Office of the President and the National Security Council, the Ministries of Foreign Affairs, Unification, Interior and Safety, and Industry, defense contractors and research institutes, local governments, telecom, power, and financial companies. In short, the entire civil-military government sphere. Only then can our drone detection network, air and missile defense systems, cybersecurity network, disaster response network, financial stability arrangements, and media and information response mechanisms function not as separate systems, but as components of a single integrated security service architecture. From the perspective of relational philosophy, this is not a task of adding more objects, it is a task of designing relationships. When North Korea launches drones, missiles and cyber attacks, our radars and satellites, telecommunications and power grids, financial networks, media organizations, local governments and citizens must be connected in a predefined sequence and along predefined pathways to minimize damage. Designing and repeatedly exercising this chain is the core of FEA-based security reform. The armed forces alone cannot carry out this task. It must be a national project involving all government ministries, the private sector, academia, and civil society. A revolution in security training that includes soldiers, reservists, and citizens, and the task of public enlightenment. Another lesson from the war in Ukraine is that it is not technology but people who ultimately decide the outcome of war. More important than drones, missiles, and cyber weapons is the skill of the people who operate and counter them, and the capacity of society as a whole to respond. NATO and advanced countries are institutionalizing at national and alliance levels integrated air and missile defense drills, cyber, power, and communications restoration exercises, and crisis communication training tailored to the age of drones and hypersonic weapons. They are practicing in advance so that institutions and citizens do not panic and freeze when crises occur. The Republic of Korea, too, must move beyond annual symbolic exercises held merely for show. We need nationwide integrated drills that assume scenarios in which drone and missile attacks, cyber attacks, power and communications outages, disinformation campaigns, and information warfare all occur simultaneously. It is not only active duty soldiers and reservists who must participate, local government officials, telecommunications, power and financial companies, media organizations, schools, hospitals, religious institutions, and individual citizens must all reach the point where they know which signals to heed and what actions to take. At the same time, public enlightenment is urgently needed. The problem does not lie only with ignorant, incompetent, and self-serving politicians and bureaucrats. A public attitude that treats security as someone else's problem and pursues only immediate self-interest also contributes to the fragility of the system. Relational philosophy warns that when trust between the people and the state collapses, no security system can stand. It becomes a house built on sand. To counter North Korea's unrestricted warfare strategy, we need not only military preparedness, but also a long-term strategy of public education and persuasion that fosters a sense among citizens that they themselves are the guardians of the constitutional order. This, I believe, is what it truly means to embed global standards and world best practices into our own reality as genuine security reform. If, in an era of North Korean drones and missiles, the Republic of Korea's security thinking remains stuck in the 20th century mindset of drawing a line and defending it, we will not only widen the technological gap, but also aggravate an even more dangerous gap in concepts and in the design of relationships. I believe that this is precisely the golden time for a 21st century security transformation that combines defense and security FEA, integrated air and missile defense, an unrestricted warfare response posture, AI-based military intelligence integration, and a national strategy of public enlightenment. To avoid missing this golden time, the armed forces and the government, the National Assembly and local governments, businesses and academia, the media and the citizens must all awaken together and act together. Thank you for watching Lee Nam-yong's long commentary.